Ladies and gentlemen, now let me greet you first in Hungarian. Üdvözlet minden magyar baratosnak, if this was more or less okay. The title of our panel, or the title of this session is Fight Club. I don't know who of you watched the movie, the film Fight Club, but the first rule of the Fight Club was, you do not talk about Fight Club. Well, we are going to break this rule, because as far as the globalism versus sovereign countries, sovereign states, this very issue is concerned, we have to speak up loudly and clearly. So we will be breaking this rule. Sovereignty matters, borders matter, identity matters, and common sense matters. Hyperglobalism is finally dead. Welcome to the era of regional resilience. Europe faces many threats, but the greatest challenges, probably the greatest challenge for Europe, for the European system, is Europe itself. Europe which suffocates free speech, which punishes innovation and weakens our defense. And basically, we have to deal with those internal issues before we really will be able to address the external problems, the external ones, like Russia, like illegal migration and distribution of illegal migration, like the expansion of the world of Islam, or China. Let me now outline these new structures of global capitalism after the recent changes, very briefly. Protectionism is no longer a dirty word. It's a kind of rule. It's a kind of new name of the game, with China subsidizing everything and protecting its market for the last 20, 30 years on the back of the transatlantic world. But quite recently also, the tariffs imposed by President Trump also marked the era of protectionism. So the gap between the global north and the global south is also deepening. What seems to be the end of the globalization era in the global north means the dawn of new globalization for the global south, but with China as the main guarantor, partner, and sponsor. So quite a change before our very eyes. The next element, next factor is the illegal migration. We probably faced the biggest human migration in the history of humankind in those times. And it's worth noticing as well that global capitalism is mutating. Whether we discuss the platform capitalism like Robert Reich is saying, or surveillance capitalism, Shoshana Zuboff, or we talk about the new Middle Ages, one thing is certain: the platforms, digital platforms, gain at significance. And nation states, sovereign nation states, become weaker and weaker vis-à-vis those platforms, those international, multinational corporations. And we have to take this into account while discussing those very basic issues about globalism versus sovereign states. I dare to speak to you today, not just for Poland, but I believe I speak for many people, many nations, rediscovering this simple truth. Sovereignty is not a memory of the past. It is and it must be the key for the future. For 30 years we were told open borders, open markets, open society, open data. This is the only way going forward. And yes, it did bring some prosperity, but at the same time it brought a lot of new challenges. The open society, open borders, open data. You can imagine what kind of challenges there are. And Poland knows all too well what kind of threats and costs this era of last globalization brought with it. And I'm sure my Hungarian friends and friends from Czech Republic, from all the Central Europe, know this very well as well. But today the global system, once a fast highway, looks more like a fragile web. And supply chains are breaking, tech monopolies are on the rise, and geopolitical tensions gain momentum. So let's be honest, the global order as we know is over. The age of hyper-globalization is giving way to a new era, the era of regional resilience. The era of globalists, I believe, and I hope, is also over. Now we must choose, build real autonomy, real strategic autonomy, sovereignty based on sovereign states, or be reduced to actors in someone else's play. Globalization must be reconsidered. It doesn't mean we have to close, we go back to autarky. We have to reconsider the rules of globalization. We need fewer illusions and more balance, and fewer dependencies and more control. International institutions like the European Commission usurped huge powers into their hands, not given to them, not transferred to them in the Treaty of Rome and Treaty of Lisbon. They are taking those powers, utilizing the weakness of national states. The European Commission is sticking its nose everywhere. It's sticking its nose in the sovereign states, and they have no rights to decide about many things, but they have been actually able to do so based on the relative weakness of sovereign states within the European Union. And we have to change it. Let me now focus briefly on sovereignty in the era of digital age. Today, 90% of global data flows through foreign controlled infrastructure in Hungary, in Poland, but also in Germany and in other countries of the European Union. Let me put it simply. Data, the lifeblood of the modern world, flows through cables and servers we don't own. So I think it's a food for thought for all of us. Chips made in East Asia control our future, and public systems are on foreign servers. AI, quite a popular topic recently. I try to connect AI and sovereignty, those two dimensions. Look, let me put a following thesis in front of you, a following point. The sovereignty is also about deregulation, deregulation in the European Union. Why is that? Look at AI. We have the thickest rule books on AI in the European Union. We have the most stringent manuals about the AI. But meanwhile, we don't have the AI in the European Union. Why is that? Because of the red tape, because the over-regulation in the European Union, and sovereign states have to ensure that the future is in our hands and not in the hands of the European Commission. If we don't do this, we will be under huge competitive pressure from other regions abroad. So sovereignty is not about isolation. Sovereignty, it's about building strong foundations so we can trade, partner, innovate without giving our identity. And what is the deepest structural issue in the European Union? I call it the impossible trinity. This is a fundamental dilemma, a catch-22 type of dilemma for the European Union. And it means that we cannot simultaneously go after three major objectives. The defense, enhancing defense system, we all know it's needed these days, and it also determines the power of each sovereign country. Number two, the Green Deal, And number 3, maintaining the welfare state in the European Union. We can concurrently go after 2 out of 3, but we cannot achieve the 3. I could have quantified this, but because of lack of time, I'm putting this argument and this thesis in front of you. That's the major dilemma, impossible trinity. We have to choose 2 out of 3. And my choice is simple. Let's go after stronger Europe, welfare state, innovative Europe, but less of this Green Deal madness which is right now in front of us. And Europe has to change completely the way how it is operating. And I tell you, there are many ideas, but I'm going to briefly mention on a couple of those. First, we have to have broad-based deregulation in many sectors. Second, implementation of the freedom to provide services. Yes, freedom to provide services, even if included in the Treaty of Rome, has not been implemented. Number 3, promotion of small and mid-sized entrepreneurship. And number 4, bold industrial strategy, which I call designed and crafted in Europe 2030. So a couple of closing statements, a couple of closing remarks, dear friends. The question is not whether we should engage with the world. It is how do we engage without losing ourselves, without losing sovereignty. Yes, we will trade. Yes, we will travel. Yes, we will cooperate. But we won't give up right to choose how we grow, whom we welcome to our sovereign states, and what values we pass on. History is our compass. Technology is our tool. Sovereignty is our foundation. And regional resilience is the way forward. We need a liberation from this madness of illegal migration. We need a liberation from the Green Deal. We need a liberation from censorship. And we need a liberation from the leftist ideology. Dear friends, once more, regional resilience, regional collaboration, coalitions of the willing, respecting rights of sovereign states, this is the way forward. Alien Hosophios Tabarok Kozoti Baratshak. Thank you very much.